Well, then, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and get started. Once again, thanks for attending today's webinar. We're going to be covering what I consider a super important part of any business, and in particular when you're doing international business, because it is culturally the countries are very different, but uh, building the customer relationships is just critical to that effort. And today we're going to be having Mr. Sam Rothschild. Ms. Heidi, go ahead if you please would, and start up through our first initial slides there. So our main sponsor is the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, and specifically the department called the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. Their mission is to maximize enterprise value for manufacturers through innovation, operational excellence, sustainability, and leadership development. And we really want to thank them for their kind support. That is what allows us to be able to provide this information at no cost to you all. And they fund us so that we can do that. We are the Arkansas District Export Council, and there are 60 decks, as we call them, throughout the United States. And we're charged with encouraging and supporting the export of goods and services that will strengthen individual companies, stimulate U.S. economic growth, and create jobs, more importantly than anything else. And it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm the chair currently of the Education Committee for the Arkansas District Export Council. Was previously the chair of the organization. And Ms. Heidi, if you can give us a slide to Mr. Sam Rothschild. Oh, okay, that's fine, right there. Want to highlight for you that last week, this is a series, a 6-part series of Grow Your Exports, and you're seeing in front of you the different classes. And last week we had Getting Ready to Export, and there is a link there to the recording of that webinar, as we will have for all the other ones. We obviously today are covering developing customer relationships, and want to make sure that you also know that next week we'll be having building a global infrastructure. And of course, what that means is both the human and financial infrastructure that you're going to need to be able to conduct business globally. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and it's important that you have that infrastructure in place, both your private partners and your internal partners, to be able to help you be successful at that, with the Arkansas District Export Council being part of that infrastructure. And if you look at this next one. So today we're honored to have Sam Rothschild, who is the COO and a partner at Slim's Chickens. Sam, I've known him for a few years now, and he has been, an integral part of, and a very big part of the success of Slim Chickens. You guys may or may not be aware that currently there's over 1,200, I think, franchise operations in the works. And they just opened up their 26th one just here in Arkansas alone, and they have operations in the UK, and currently are working to develop more franchise operations throughout all of North America, meaning, of course, Canada and Mexico. And they're working currently on developing a franchise operation in the EU, and in Turkey. And over the next 10 months, they hope to be able to open up 80 more franchise operations worldwide. And as I said, they've got around 1,200 of them in the development stage. So they're a big player in the franchise world. And Heidi and I were talking about the fact that chicken is the national protein for Arkansas, but there's a lot of other places that like it as well, and very few people do it better than Slim Chickens. I will tell you for a fact. And He's going to talk to us about his experience as a service provider, because you may know that services are actually the fastest growing portion of exporting. And people think about exporting in terms of widgets, products, but services can be exported as well. And a franchise operation is exporting intellectual property, just as maybe engineers would and architects would. And so he's going to talk to us about the ability and the need for developing customer relationships and how important that is to making sure that you're successful at exporting, whether it's products or services. And so, Sam, with that, if you will take it away.
Thank you, Rudy. Appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Excellent. Yes.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you for the warm introduction, and appreciate your support of Slim Chickens as well. I want to thank everybody for joining the call today. My style is to be highly interactive. So at any time you want to ask a question, unmute or, take yourself off of your screen, and let's see where this conversation takes us today. Developing customer relations as part of getting ready to export is a critical component of being in the phase of trying to export your goods and services. Interesting enough, my screen will not move forward. So let me stop sharing for a minute. Excuse me for one moment, even though we tested this, Heidi.
It's hilarious. We tested it and it was working just fine.
Yeah, let me put it in a different screen mode here. I promised the presentation will get better. Can you guys see my screen?
Not right now.
All right, hold on. Can you see that?
Yes, it says you. There we go.
Okay, we'll take it through here. I'm going to try to do presentation mode one more time and let's see what happens. Okay, there you go.
All right.
All right, thank you so much. Anyway, we're going to talk about customer relations. We're going to really talk about cultural needs and relationship management to have a better understanding how to approach and build relationships with a very culturally diverse world, and how to manage your customers' expectations. And I have been blessed to do international work since the mid-90s. Started exporting goods and services through some of my prior brands. Personally, I have visited over 50 countries around the world. I've done business in over 27 that I think I've counted. And I will tell you, the ability to garner authentic personal and professional relationships with people that you're trying to do business with is essential to being successful in trying to get a business relationship, partnership, or business in general to get off the ground. It is absolutely paramount. So we're going to talk about a few things today to take us down this road. Look, there are four basic fundamentals. One is to establish credibility for yourself and your organization, how to build out your network, how to leverage the web, and challenges of the international market. So I'm going to breeze through this really quick. As we said earlier, getting ready to export, this segment here is on developing relationships and figuring out how to get things moving along. adapting your company to understand what's going on around the world is critical. And I'll just tell you, people do business with people, not just companies. Cultivating trust and understanding is paramount. One of the things that you will have to understand is actually the person or company that you're doing business with. The decision maker may not always speak English. So you're going to have to effectively communicate and to connect with somebody within that organization that can carry the message back and forth for you as you're either they're speaking an Asian language or speaking Spanish or speaking Arabic, whatever language you come across. Now, what I've seen over the years is more and more people in the organizations, even at higher levels, are speaking English. English is pretty much becoming the universal language around the world. But I'm still running into situations myself as I'm traveling the globe doing business. I'm talking to a lot of people in Mexico, and a lot of the individuals that are decision makers in these organizations, they don't speak English. So they rely on a trusted individual within their company to do so. What that means, though, is that body language and tone as you're dealing with people face to face is critical. They can kind of see the sincerity in your eyes or the tonality of your voice and the body language that you have. If you are fortunate enough that the people that are the decision makers in the organization do speak English, there has to be this genuine, authentic, I'll say personal and professional connection at times that quickly begins to build trust, trust personally and trust professionally. Small talk is critical. A lot of times, dropping your guard and talking a little bit about yourself or your family or your personal values goes a long way. A lot of times people want to know who you are before you dive into business. There's a lot of time spent on the social side, and you have to be patient. Different societies, different cultures move at their own pace. And sometimes one of the things I found out a long time ago, I was in a Central American country and I was getting frustrated with some of the people that were moving at a much slower pace than I'm used to moving at. And the one guy just looked at me and he said, "Man, you're just going to have to remember you're not in America anymore. We do things different here." And that was a lightning bolt moment for me and really made me step back and go, you know what, I need to figure out how to pace myself and set my own expectations for that. And I think it goes a long way if you're trying and willing to learn a little bit about their culture. One of the things that I did back in the late 90s, I was doing some business in South Korea, and we were there for a couple of days. So one of the days we did was afternoon, which we called cultural orientation. And they would teach me a lot about Korean culture. We'd go and see some things, and then we'd spend some time talking about American culture. But they actually taught me how to read Korean, how to write it. I didn't know the translation, but I could phonetically make myself get through it. But they saw that as a signal of my willingness to really understand who they were, and ultimately wound up having a very successful business with these people. So learning a few phrases: hello, goodbye, thank you, nice to see you, most often phrases, just make sure you say them right. But it'll go a long way with trying to establish a relationship. If your company is really serious about doing this, you or somebody in your organizations are going to get ready to pack a bag, and you may be in for a very long flight. Part of the prep that was discussed in the earlier seminar about getting your organization ready to export or try to get into this business. Depending on where you're going, if you're headed to the Middle East and you're coming out of Arkansas you're going to fly to Dallas, and then you're going to fly maybe Emirates Air, and you're going to wind up in Dubai first, and then you're going to use that as a hub and spoke. Leaving Fayetteville, Arkansas, and getting to, I was doing some business in Kuwait, was a 24-hour journey. I would, whoever is doing your budget, ask them to let you fly business class. It's a lot more comfortable. And the other thing I would say is you need to stay in the higher end hotels. There's a few reasons why. One, it's prestige. It kind of makes a statement as to who you are and what your company is, depending on which hotel chains you stay in. So I've always gone for, the higher end properties. I actually prefer Ritz-Carltons when I can. And there's a few reasons why. One, safety for yourself and your people is paramount. Two, services are critical. I'll give you an example recently that happened to me. I did a swing through the Middle East a couple months ago, and I was started in Dubai. I went to Pakistan, then I went to Egypt, and wound up in Saudi. Well, I got sick between Pakistan and Egypt. I picked up some kind of bug, maybe some food poisoning. And I'm a guy who rarely doesn't feel well and really have a high tolerance. It was about 2:00 in the morning. I thought I was going to die. I called the front desk, told them I was sick, and I really probably needed to go to the hospital or do something. And they had a doctor at my hotel room within like 45 minutes. You're not going to get that in a lot of places. And remember, you need to be able to take care of yourself. So hotels are important. For me, it's prestige, who you are as an individual, who you are as a company, making sure that the security is really good. And it really depends on which parts of the world. And then, services are critical if you need things. Also, as you're developing relationships, you need to understand social norms for meals and entertainment. Smoking is a big issue in a lot of countries. Man, they smoke a lot. And, if you might not want to be around cigarette smoking, but you might have to suck it up because, you're in a room with a bunch of people smoking and you really can't say anything. Obviously, in the Middle East, you're, not going to have a lot of adult beverages, but I always kind of take my cues from the people I'm dealing with and see whether or not these people drink or not. Culturally, some places, man, they drink a lot and they may expect you to drink a lot. So prepare yourself because refusing to at times, says something that you're not willing to play along. And then who picks up the check? For me, I always insist I pick up the check, and they usually aren't going to bother with you on that. And they're not going to fight you, but you gotta, be able to read the room and see what's going on. And then there's some cultural nuances that you really just have to look at. Just because people are polite to you and maybe nodding at you and agreeing with you doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing that. You see that a lot in the Asian cultures. So you really got to be flexible and really understand what you're getting yourself into. I found something fascinating decades ago. I was in the Middle East, and I usually cross my legs when I'm talking, and I kind of have my foot up over my knee. And I was told once and then told twice and that you shouldn't do that because you shouldn't show the soles of your feet to the leaders of the country. And most every place you're at, there are pictures of the sheikh and the crown prince or whatever. And I had one guy twice, he goes, "Man, you need to leave your feet on the floor." And I was like, "Why?" And he told me, and I was like, okay. Now it took me a few times to correct myself, but those are just minor cultural nuances that you need to understand. You don't have to get hung up on it. People will understand, but at some point in time, you got to adapt to what you're experiencing. But that all goes to the relationship of getting things started off properly. There's some key concepts to think about as you're trying to establish your credibility. For me, I'm always a under promise and over perform kind of person. I even do that with my partners as we set out business objectives. I'd like the organization to win. Again, learn how they do business. Don't get frustrated at the pace, and understand what kind of pace they want to work at, so you're not getting frustrated on either side. As you're thinking about, what it is that you're selling, I don't know, the individuals here on the call, but you got to go after quality, competitive products and the services, and those are kind of table stakes. There, obviously, if you're out there making sales calls or you're starting to do some of the stuff, you guys already know, there's something there. But there's also, if you're out doing trade shows and you're just meeting people, which I do, you got to be on your A game quick to be able to make those quick connections with people to decide whether or not they want to follow up meetings with you or move the ball forward. If you're doing business with people and you're trying to get deals done together, you got to knock down barriers and be able to dispense with things quickly as impediments to getting deals done come up. They got to see you as agile, flexible, but at the same time, you got to hold your ground. Some people in some parts of the world, they will negotiate you hard. And that's part of what they do. And you just got to be patient and know where you're going to draw your line in the sand. The other part is really, as you're thinking about your training and support and your marketing materials and the things that are going to be key and essential to, whether or not you're exporting intellectual property or whatever widget or thing that you do, you have to be able to quickly establish your credibility as a subject matter expert, and that your product is going to meet the need of the customer that you're talking to. And that's all about establishing credibility. So if it's not you, then it's somebody that you're going to send out to talk to people or have Zoom calls with or get on the phone. They better know what they're talking about. They got to be subject matter experts to establish you are a credible company. The people that work for you or yourself know what they're talking about and know what they're doing. If they get a sense that, it's not so good, it's not going to go far very fast, and things are going to grow cold if you're trying to sell something to somebody. Now, if you get the meeting and it's time to establish the credibility, you really have to understand their needs and expectations. What is it they're trying to accomplish? How do you size the prize for you against what it is that they're trying to do? Is this $1 million transaction? Is this a $5 million transaction? Is this a 2-year thing, a 5-year thing, 10-year thing? What is it that you are, what kind of individual are you dealing with? How much is it worth to your organization? And is it worth the time and effort? I always tell people, don't chase bad deals just to get a deal. You got to make sure it's a good quality deal for your company and theirs as well. I think the biggest thing is, for me, is this whole piece of differentiation. So if you're competing against other people for the same product or service, what makes you different? What makes you better? Is it price? Is it quality? Is it speed to market? Is it your people, your company, the way you're willing to support and service somebody? They have to find a reason why to buy from you versus your competitor. And as I said earlier, just be patient when working a deal. Not everybody moves at your pace. But all these pieces of this about the personal relationship and who you are and what kind of individual you are and what your company stands for and the products and services that you're trying to sell, all these things lead up to whether or not you're a credible organization and you're a credible person to deal with. And then you really got to sell them on the fact of what you have to offer. And it depends on how competitive they're looking at different things. The majority of the people I do business with, I'm not the only company that they're talking to. And I know that, and a lot of times they'll be really upfront with me on that. So I got to figure out those key items or issues that they're looking for that makes me different than the other people that they're doing business with. For me, fortunately, I have an unbelievable team that has created Slim Chickens. I've done this with other restaurant concepts, and we have a very high success rate of getting deals done when we do engage with somebody and really get after it, whether it's domestically or internationally. And you can always call me after this or email me and we can talk about it later. There will be, there are places here to get some more information about how to build your network for success. One of the things that you're going to have to figure out is how much adaptation are you going to have to do to fit local customs and cultures as you're looking at your the company that you're doing business with. Now, your product or service may not be flexible. That's fine. But if there is some things that can be nuanced to the country or individuals that you're dealing with, you need to quickly understand what those are. And you're going to have to modify your approach to accommodate these conditions. One of the things that's critical, though, and I tell this to everybody, is don't be afraid to ask for the order. And, you know, you got to make the trips. You can do things on Zoom, but Zoom only comes after you've done, you know, you can do initial Zooms for sure, but at some point in time, somebody's going to have to make the trip, establish a relationship, get face-to-face to people with the decision makers. And then at some point in time, you're going to have to figure out whether or not this deal is going to happen, or hit key milestones for you that says, yeah, I'm going to continue to invest time and money and effort to see whether or not, you know, there's a deal to get done here. If you're able to get that, then fine. Organizationally, you're going to have to figure out, is the deal maker the same person or persons that are going to have the long-term relationship with this company? And it may or may not be. So at some point in time, you're going to have to involve other people in the organization to make sure there's connectivity and continuity. If you're on this call and you own your company, or you're a senior leader within the organization that has a ton of tenure and you're not going anywhere, even though you might hand this off, the people that are the decision makers in these other organizations, whether or not they own their company or they work for a big conglomerate, there's so many different things you could do. They have to understand that you're not going to be too far from the activity and actions that are going on, and that you're still going to stay connected to the business. You're never really going to leave them. You're going to stay in touch, and you're going to make sure that this thing works. For me, one of the things that I hold very sacred is the fact that the people that I'm doing business with are investing tens of millions of dollars in the realm of Slim Chickens is going to be successful for them, domestically as well, internationally even more. But I have a franchisee in the UK. He just opened his 34th location. He's going to open 18 more this year. We believe we'll have hundreds of restaurants over there. We service and support the heck out of that group. It's a royalty situation for us. They're doing a great job with the brand. We're over there a lot. It's a good thing I like London, but they get a lot of attention. But they've invested tens of millions of dollars. I don't take that lightly. So your organization needs to respect the fact that people are going to put out a lot of capital to buy whatever it is you're selling.
Sam, if I can jump in here for just a second, you know,
Yeah.
one of the reasons is sometimes people will say, well, I mean, with Zoom nowadays, why do I need to, you know, fly to London or fly to wherever, you know? And one of the things that's just super important to understand is that it is about relationships, just exactly like Sam is saying, but also because of the legal systems or the differences in the legal systems. You know, people like here in the United States, if you have something go south, you can kind of expect that the courts will figure it out and you'll get a fair shake. But if you're in some foreign country, that's not necessarily the case, right? And so one of the reasons that things go much slower in terms of somebody buying, you know, your product or service is because they have to vet you out. They have to feel comfortable with you and develop their relationship, because they can't count on their legal system if something goes south. And so you've got to jump on that plane and go to, you know, Dubai, you know, Malaysia, wherever it is, to develop that relationship. So that is that you can go and do Zoom once that relationship is built, but not at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely spot on. Um, and it is important. And I know there's another call that talks about the legal aspects of things in this learning series, but it is critical. I mean, Rudy is spot on. Look, you have to ensure organizationally that you have a team in place, um, both internally and externally, to get this transaction done. I at times use brokers, international advisors. I have a legal counsel that is here based in the US, but they have offices all over the world. So they know these countries, they have legal representation there. And actually, it also lends credibility to you when I say, well, this is the law firm that I'm going to use that are going to work on the legal documents together. And usually they kind of perk up and go, wow, you use those guys? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And they're like, wow, they're like the best in the world. I'm like, yes, and so are their bills. It costs a lot of money, but they absolutely do it right. And look, you have to take the opportunity. Um, I call it quality of process. So all along the way, as they deal with your people or they're dealing with you, they're measuring you against some kind of mental quality standard. And it helps build your internal rep, your internal credibility and trust as they're ticking the box on dozens of things that have to happen typically to get a deal done. And that other people or other entities that are outside your organization they're doing business with, they just see it as high quality. And to Rudy's point earlier, and look, I make a lot of overseas trips. The face-to-face interactions are critical. Zoom only gets you so much. People want to go out to dinner. They want to have face-to-face conversations. They want to be able to bring their people in. It has to be live. COVID was interesting. In some instances, I think we lost a lot of steps, not just me, but the world in general. But as things are, getting back to, whatever this post-COVID world is, I see people around the world, it's kind of gotten back to pre-COVID as far as people wanting to do business together and do it live and in person. But, look, it takes a lot of money and it takes a lot of fortitude to do it. If you're sending people out in your organization, do a fundamental fortitude test to see whether or not they can withstand some of the stamina of travel, both personally and professionally. As a young guy, I spent about 4 years of my life in the mid to late 90s, spending about 75% of my time outside of the US, traveling around the world, getting a lot of deals done. But I didn't have a lot of balance in my life, and my wife and kids let me know it after a while. So I think there's a little bit of that that has to be thought through. But really, these face-to-face meetings, and look, you got to invite people to the U.S. You got to be proud of what you do. You got to invite them to your company. They got to see what it is that you're doing, or go to other places that are using your products and services. So it's not always you got to pack your bag and go. These face-to-face relationships should be here as well within your organization, and invite them in. Be proud of what you do, put it on display, put your company and your people on display. And I will tell you, for my company, one of the things that makes me really happy is when people come to see us and they meet our team. I have about 65 people that work here in my office now. They're just blown away at the quality and caliber of the people that we have, and their culture and attitude towards how we service and support our franchisees. And they pick up on that, and they make mention of it to me time and again. And that's critical, that they know and understand the people and the culture that you have in your company, and whether or not that meshes with theirs. One of the things that you need to do is leverage your web and your website. a lot of people quickly start Googling the heck out of everything. They also look at, whether or not you have stuff posted up on some of these social media platforms. They're going to be investigating you and the people in your organization as much as they can. A lot of companies, inclusive of myself, have not always done a good job on their website, or have a page or a link to an international version of your website. I was dealing with a company one company in Mexico recently, and I thought it was really cool. They had an English translation button. And it was a very large multinational company, and everything was on there in Spanish. And then I found the English translation, and I thought that was really cool. I hadn't thought of that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that anytime soon, but that was a plus one. I came back and told my web designers, I'm like, man, that's really cool. And then, of course, they said, oh, yeah, that can be done. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me that? That was a joke. So anyway, you got to internationalize your website or nuance it. If you are getting ready to export or you are exporting already, it's always good to put up photos, especially if you're out there internationally, or you put up logos of people that you're doing business with. If you have any PR, any positive PR, any marketing materials, anything that leads to believe that you know what you're doing, you have the products and services that you have, put it on there. Make it easily accessible. Promote what it is that you're doing, and then have somebody in your organization continue to update your content. I have 2 PR firms here in the United States. If you Google Slim Chickens and you look at all the press releases, I think I've probably had 25, 30 press releases in the last 60 days. Some of them I pay for through ad placements, and a lot of them, we've just gotten so much play here over the last 10 years on how our company is growing. The trade magazines write a lot of stories about us. So in here in the States, in the restaurant industry, there's 3 main publications. There's Nation's Restaurant News, Franchise Times, and QSR Magazine. And my head of development, franchise development, she's got a great working relationship with all 3. And then we have a PR firm that does this ad placement for us or pitches these ideas and gets stories written on us. And I will tell you that the PR that we do is probably drives 90% of the inbound inquiries about our goods and services. So it is absolutely critical. If you want to get up and running, fill your website up full of stuff. If you can hire a PR firm, hire them, get stories written about your company, and get yourself out there. I think it's absolutely critical to leverage these types of activities to get some movement. And then if you do sign deals, scream it from the rooftops, and get as much as you can out of that event. So look, building lasting relationships with your customers, obviously is critical. The other side of this, obviously, is for you to go out there and proactively recruit and search for, customers. For us, we attend industry trade shows. I attended a trade show in Dubai a couple months ago. It was held for basically people in the GCC in Southeast Asia. Made a few contacts there. Personally, I don't spend a lot of time on language skills, but I do know some of the basics. And I'm very respectful of it. And in some countries, I can kind of pick up on some of the conversations when they're speaking in their native language versus speaking English in front of me. But 95% of the time, they've got people there that speak English in front of me. But there are, like I said before, people who you're dealing with that do not speak English. And look, on the business side of this thing, you got to just continue to remember how your product works through. You'll hear later about researching your products and product approvals and pricing, and consider product differentiation. There's a lot of that you have to do. In my business, we go into some of these countries and their flavor profile and how they eat food is different. I have 17 variety of sauces here in the US. I have 12 in the UK, and even then they're slightly modified. And I'll just give you one other thing. So in Europe and the Middle East, they don't allow any products that have genetically modified food, which we put in almost everything that we eat. So I'm virtually not able to export any of my food from the US overseas. So we have to spend a lot of time over there sourcing products that are acceptable and that will fit my menu. There may be instances of that have to go on, and I don't know what kind of widget you're using, but some stuff you might have to source locally. A lot of times, and not only in my industry, but others, they have import bans on certain things. So whatever widgets you're putting together, you might have to be able to use stuff from other parts of the world, as well as the stuff that you're able to get over into these other countries. Very critical. So a couple FAQs, and then we'll open this up. I think, I'm probably not the best person to ask what kind of products or services in demand overseas. I will tell you, I learned a lesson a long time ago from a gentleman that I worked with, and it was my first foray into international work. And he looked at me. He was one of the original billionaires in the United States, made the money the hard way coming up through the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And he just looked at me and he said, "Sam, the United States makes up 8% of the world's population. The other 92% want what we have." So there is a demand for our products and services all over the world. We discussed about your customer relations. I will say this third bullet point is somewhat critical. Concerns about civil unrest and anti-American tendencies. I think you have to be very discerning as to what parts of the world you are willing to go into and which ones you are not. There are times people want me to go to certain parts of the Middle East that are still not favorable, and there are actually some countries we're banned from going to. You have to decide whether or not you want to go into these countries. I will say, decades ago, I had some businesses in Venezuela, and that's when it was right. We were a couple years into it, and then that's when the government switched over basically to socialism, and we had to get out of there, and the business, wound up closing down. I actually was there for 2 days. I couldn't get out of the country, and I had some connections that got me out. I try to assess early on whether or not there's political unrest. A good example, which I wouldn't have thought of a couple years ago, was what happened in Hong Kong over the last couple years. So we're looking at Hong Kong again, but we're looking at it with a very discerning eye, and not just rushing in there. So there's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on out there. I think you got to do your homework. Never put your people in harm's way, and have a network built if you can. If there are stuff that happens, you can quickly get to your people and make arrangements for them to be safe. You just never know. There are calculated risks, and then there's some places where it never really was a problem. Be interesting, what happened in Turkey this week. Not that there was political unrest, but there's a lot of stuff going on over there right now, and if I had people on the ground, I'd have to be dealing with it. What sort of things should I bring with me, and what appropriate gifts are? I think you have to wait on that. I would say to bring with yourself early on is your intellectual horsepower, your smile, your authenticity, and really good stuff about your company and what it is that you're trying to do. I think gifts down the road are appropriate. My friends in the UK, now we just give each other stuff. Half of them are gag gifts, and some are, sincere, because we're at that point in life. And same thing with my friends in the Middle East. We don't do a lot of gift giving. We're kind of older. But there are some cultures, where that may come up. I've seen less and less of that through the year. And this last piece, how do I protect my company against foreign disruptions? I think there's two things on the foreign disruption side. One is currency. So a financial flow disruption is when the currency goes in the wrong direction. So for example, in the UK, the currency, the pound versus the dollar is 20% below where it was a year ago. So actually my business over there has grown year over year on a comp basis, but my income is down because of the conversion from pounds to dollars. So I wouldn't call that a disruption, but it is a disruption to cash flow. There's not much you can do about if there are disruptions. We're getting ready to open a restaurant in Turkey at the airport, which is the largest airport in the world now. And they had this earthquake. I got over there, or I called them there yesterday, and it's a little chaotic over there. I was just checking to see if they're okay. But then, I don't, it's going to open on time now. You just don't know what's going on. But there are geopolitical things going on all the time. I think you have to assess risk and whether or not that's going to disrupt your business. If there are things going on out there, that's part of the risk assessment you have to do when you're trying to decide whether or not you want to do business with a company or that it is inside a certain country. I go for the easy ones first because there's a lot of excellent countries out there that are very, pro-USA and have a very stable government. And I know there's in the prior session around getting ready to export, we spent some time talking about, looking at these different governments and geopolitical stability, and that's critical. But that's for another seminar. So I'm going to open it up. We have a little bit of time here.
Sam, before we jump on that, I want to mention two different things that you talked about. You were talking about the fact that you've got different flavors from one country to another, and that's really important to understand. For instance, just here in the United States alone, you would think that the Coca-Cola that you get in Arkansas is the same Coca-Cola that you get in Florida, but it isn't. The people in Florida and that area there like their Coca-Cola sweeter, and therefore the distributors actually make it sweeter. And so if that's true just in the United States alone, you can imagine that in other countries you're going to have things that you need to consider in terms of things like flavorings, right? Sauces and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Mexico, they have Mexican Coke. They actually sell it here in like Sam's Club and Costco, but it's made with cane sugar. It's not made with the same stuff that they make here. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the other thing is that in terms of translation, I would not think it's a huge deal. You guys have probably heard of the U.S. Commercial Service, and they're part of Commerce, U.S. Commerce, and they have a program called the Gold Key program, where they can provide a lot of assistance, including translators. Or I should say, I think it's interpreters. But in any case, you can go to, Guatemala, or you can go to Malaysia or whatever, and somebody from the embassy will meet you there, and they can help you vet out potential partners, potential distributors, and also assign somebody to go with you to the business meeting and provide translation services if in fact it is necessary. So don't let language be a hindrance in terms of your looking at various countries.
Yeah, I think that's a great ad, Rudy. You're spot on. I had to have a legal issue in Taiwan decades ago where there was something funny going on with the business, and I had somebody who was working for me to translate. I didn't rely on the other company that I was doing business with. I had to bring somebody on board because it was a sticky situation for sure.
Sam, I have a question. I mean, I used to live in Hong Kong from 2007 through 2012. So I lived there for about 5 years. And during my travel, I had 26 countries in Asia Pacific that I was responsible for. I noticed that McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken were the two most popular in Hong Kong, in mainland China, and many other Asian countries. You feel that from their perspective, from McDonald's perspective, they did not see the political risk of China, or what? I mean, I'm trying to understand why they felt comfortable, and I feel that you imply that there's someone, lack of comfort in your part.
Yeah, I'll use the most recent example. McDonald's 100% closed down all of their Russian operations this year. And it was 4% of, I think it was 4% of their total global revenue. And they just shut it down. And there were a couple other companies that did the same. I think Starbucks closed everything in Russia because of everything that's going on over there. A lot of those situations, I know most all those situations are franchise situations. And I think, in different parts of the world, I don't know what makes them think. I do know a lot of times, depending on if there's a hot zone, they'll close a lot of locations until things settle down and get back to normal. So you might have temporary closures for a year or two, depending on how they kind of get through it. But, you look at Kentucky Fried Chicken, I mean, they're my global competitor. This in Asia, there's 4 KFCs to every McDonald's because they eat a heck of a lot more chicken over there than they do beef. So I think it's very situational, depending on what's going on in some of these countries.
And do you use any consultant which gives you country risk analysis? Because I remember I used that frequently when I was in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I have brokers in 4 different parts of the world, and then I have resources and access to research what's going on in these countries. And obviously there's things that we can do with the Gold Key program in the embassies that give us access. Actually, my international development team used the Gold Key program, and they were in Malaysia and the Philippines.
It's called Decadron, and it's a steroid to prevent inflammation.
Who's ever in the hospital needs to put themselves on mute.
What do you say?
Heidi, are you able to mute that person?
There you go. Anyway, yeah, we use brokers. We use Gold Key information from the embassy, and then I have some global partners that give us a lot of insight. Actually, Rudy brought them up. We're a Coca-Cola account, and Coca-Cola has intel on just about every country in the world, and it's usually pretty up to date.
Well, let's go ahead and open up the session for some questions, if you please would.
I see a chat button here. Maybe I can hit this.
Yeah, it says here, Sam, which are your favorite countries in the EU?
To personally go to or do business in?
And you guys can go ahead and unmute and ask your questions.
Okay, I see it here. This is from Martin.
Yeah.
To do business in, I would say right now we're looking at France, Germany, Spain. We were taking a very hard look at Poland, which we think will be great. So that part of the EU, we think from a overall business perspective, that is very very advantageous for us to go into those markets right now. I think we'll kind of peel into them, as those opportunities come, but we're targeting those countries right now. And we're actively seeking deals because in our view of the world, for food service and what we have to offer, there is a very high propensity for people that want our product and want our service, and they're kind of doing it. So yeah, we're looking at those most prevalent.
Sam, I have a question. Your feeling, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you, Martin.
Yeah, and Martin, I think I can answer your question about Brexit, whether it's going to stay or not.
Oh, it was the Brexit Act? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I'm in
Okay.
close touch with, people in the UK, and yeah, it's gonna stay. I think there is some opposition internally from the civil service folks that would prefer to get back into the EU, but I think it is, fairly clear that the UK is going to stay out of the E EU.
Yeah, my ground intelligence tells me the same. I think there's the country was kind of 50-50 split on it to begin with. And there's still a lot of people there that aren't happy with it, but I think they're so far down the road, they're not going to untangle it again. So, yeah.
That ship has sailed.
Well, that's stopping me from doing business there because I have sources in Manchester, Liverpool that are moving their workshops and their factories to Ireland. And that's the reason why I'm asking the question.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Martin, one of the things that is stalling out a UK US FTA is in fact Ireland. And of course, there are other issues as well.
Sure. I've actually been to Ireland and most of Europe, it's very interesting.
It's an interesting time over there. The entire European geopolitical system is kind of sideways right now, and so's the economies. So we're having to be patient. We do see this clearing up. We've got about a 24, 36 month view of, things are going to settle in and settle down because some of these guys are still trying to get their footing back from everything that happened to them with COVID. And then they're seeing hyperinflation. The UK actually, I think, has the highest inflation. They have higher inflation than we do. And they're suffering from extremely high energy costs. And then all these people evacuated the UK and went back to their Eastern European countries during COVID. And now they're being restricted on coming back in. So there's a worse labor shortage over there than there is over here. But they see a pathway to that. They see it settling down soon. But they now have a king, and they've changed over 3 prime ministers in a very short period of time. So they're trying to get their footing.
Right.
I haven't a very small deal to Canada. And the funny thing is coming back with so much more interest. And I'm my focus over to Canada now. And moving actually very nicely with the Department of Trade and the Department of Commerce. They've been extremely big help for us.
That reminded me of something. I'll just share this with everybody on the call. You need to, depending on your product or service, you need to make sure that your trademarks, if you need trademark protection in some of these countries, are registered. Now, the biggest, easiest one to do is the EU because it covers all of Europe, and you only have to do 1 or 2 trademark protections. In some of these other countries, there's a lot of work to do. It's very expensive at times. But I did have a bandit up in Canada that had registered my trademark before me, and now I'm in a legal battle with him. So there's some great law firms that can do some scans for you. Most companies can't afford the trademark in every country around the world. But if there are targeted areas where you think you're going to go and your trademark is important to you, whether it's your logo or your words or a combination thereof, you need to get with a trademark attorney that understands international trademark registration, and you better check your trademarks.
That actually reminds me of something that I want to share with you all. In terms of looking at what countries might be good target markets for you, you should be looking at your Google Analytics to see, what countries are looking, or what the people from what countries are looking at your website. And just strictly as an example, if you see that 12% of the traffic that you're getting on your website is from Spain, Well, translating your website into Spanish, quite frankly, to almost any language is actually a pretty easy thing to do with the Google AI. The translation has become significantly more accurate than it was just a couple of years ago. I mean, where you had maybe 80, 85% accuracy, now it's closer to 95%. And so it's a really easy thing to have your website translated into a foreign language. It won't be 100% accurate, but if somebody who does not speak English, or has a weak understanding of English, is able to hit a Spanish button and be able to read with 95% accuracy your website, I mean, they will more than get the gist of what's going on there. And that's going to open up opportunities for you. So look at your Google Analytics to determine what countries are looking at your website, and then if it's a sufficiently large percentage, consider having turning your website into Spanish or Polish or German or whatever the markets are showing.
Any other questions?
No, just speaking of the EU, I'd like to share with you that on February 22nd, there is the National Association of District Export Councils is actually going to be talking specifically about exporting to the EU.
Wonderful segue, Heidi. That's perfect.
Yes, that worked out perfectly, didn't it? And they're going to talk about currency, because not everyone uses the euro. And they're going to talk about packaging and regulations, and lastly about data privacy. So
yeah, these are all really, really significant issues when doing business with the EU, and you definitely have to get it right, and it's going to cost you money. And so it's important that you know what the regulations are, because they take them very seriously.
yes, so you can. I guess you can't click through, but if I was to click through, you would go to the NADEC website, and it's there. It is not free, unfortunately, but it's a nominal cost. So I hope
Which
you'll
is
consider
that,
that.
February?
Pardon?
22nd, no?
Yeah, this is the National District Export Council. This is the national organization that's putting this particular class on. Unfortunately, that particular class is not free through the national deck. But once again, if you're serious about doing business in the EU, the information that you're going to acquire from there is just critical. I don't know how else to put it. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
No. Please send me the link.
Yeah, I'll send y'all. Let me put the link.
Yeah.
Chat.
And as I think Heidi mentioned early on, we will have a recording of today's webinar probably within a couple of days, and so be looking for it. And the other thing that I want to share with you again is for everyone who has is going to attend all 6 of the classes. We will be providing a certificate of basics of exporting certificate to those people who attend all 6 classes, and I think that's a good thing to have.
That's very nice. Thank you.
Ms. Heidi, let me see.
Oh yes.
Michelle. Oh yeah. Please send me the. I just see the I.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Any other thoughts or questions, ladies and gentlemen?
If anybody wants to reach out, you see my email, pretty simple, sam@slimchickens.com. And if you want to chat offline about everything, anything you want, let me know.
Absolutely. And Sam, thank you so much again for lending your expertise and your insights on this really important topic. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again for attending today's webinar. And I think we'll call it a day.
Thank you, everybody.
See you on the next one next week.
Thank you all for being here.
Bye.